Welcome to our lovely demo that we're going to be doing today. We're going to be showing a couple different things as well as going over beans as well. I am and everything about beans. I am Chef Quentin along with Chef Dan here. Just to kind of give you kind of a little bit of background about myself, and then I'll kind of kick it over to Dan. After that, I've been a spoke chef for Bush for Bush's Beans for about a year. I come from a predominantly background of restaurant industry. So, I've done, working from mass kitchens to fine dining through all that here in the city of Chicago. Yes, that's kind of all about me. I'm going to kick it over to Dan.
I am Chef Dan Solomon here on behalf of Bush's Beans. I too have a pretty extensive background in restaurants and hotels and a little bit of catering experience. I think without any further ado, I think before we get into the recipes, we're going to do a little bit of a background on beans. First up, we're going to talk about, really sustainability, right? So beans, they are super sustainable. They replenish the nitrogen in the soil that they're planted. That helps to reduce the need for fertilizers, which in turn helps decrease some greenhouse gas emissions. So, just doing some really good things, just a great workhorse that doesn't have take too much of a toll on the environment. They also require less water, less irrigation. They're more drought tolerant than a lot of major crops. Especially, when in comparison to animal proteins, the cattle, pork and chicken farming, that stuff really does. It's not super, environmentally friendly. Try to offset that with more consumption of like plant-based diets, things like that. Beans, they also, they reduce the risk of soil erosion and depletion, kind of getting back to that, how they replenish the nitrogen in the soil. They're just a great thing to kind of keep things going. And on that note, Bush's, they irrigate with recycled water. I think about 10% of the water they use is recycled water for irrigation. So again, just really looking at that sustainability. And then, outside of the bean itself, the can, it's the most recycled container in the United States, about a 64% recycling rate. There's no weird BPA linings or anything like that. It's all, I believe, all steel. And it's, again, just really recyclable and just constantly getting reused. And Q's going to give us a little background on the nutrition of beans.
Yeah, so I mean, kind of, piggybacking off what Chef Dan was saying, we talk about sustainability, but also it's important to know, that beans are a nutritional powerhouse. It's a superfood, if you will. It's one of the most nutritionally complete foods you'll find out there, being high in complex carbs, dietary and soluble fibers, protein, iron, zinc, magnesium, you name it. Beans has got the nutritional value for you there. It has more protein and fiber than any other vegetable. It's low in fat. There's no cholesterol. And it also slowly digests. So, slowly digesting, that's going to promote satiety and providing a low glycemic load. So, it will leave you full. And also it'll help you regulate and stabilize that blood sugar, making them great for almost any diet out there that you might be following.
So as mentioned, we're going to do a couple of recipes for you. We've got 3 recipes for you. We're going to do a black bean guacamole. This one is, it just takes your standard guacamole to the next level, with the inclusion of some black beans, give you some good texture. It's going to help you stretch that guacamole so you can serve more people without putting in a ton of labor into it. And again, it's just going to up that Latin flavor, because we're going to be using the easy entrees, the Taco Fiesta black beans for that. More on those later. We're also going to be doing a little chickpea and vegetable stew with some pickled onions, avocado, and some harissa, which we'll touch on that a little bit more for those of you who aren't familiar. But again, this is just a good, hearty, globally flavored stew. It's versatile to work across the seasons. You can swap out those spring vegetables for anything, and we'll touch on that while we're going through it. And then we've also got The last thing is going to be a little smoothie. And I know a lot of people scoff at putting beans in a smoothie, but trust me, it's delicious. You know, and it's going to give us, you know, you're going to use everything that's inside of that can, the water included, and we'll touch on that more later. And again, it's going to those beans are going to add a boost of protein to help, you know, boost your breakfast and keep you full until lunchtime. But before we get into those recipes, we're going to show you a quick little video giving you a little bit of background on Bush's.
We are That Beautiful Bean Company. A bunch of bean believers on a mission to put the humble little bean back on its proper pedestal. And have a good time doing it. Since Bean One, the Bush family has been right here in Chestnut Hill, Tennessee, in the foothills of the Great Smoky Mountains. Committed solely to celebrating, innovating, and deliciousifying this often overlooked legume. Because we believe there simply isn't a more beautiful food. Uniquely wholesome, powerful, and truly sustainable. I mean, even the cans are infinitely recyclable. Come on, little satchels of joy that we think have the power to change the world. After all, there's a reason we've been rolling that beautiful bean footage for decades. Roll that beautiful bean footage.
We are
That beautiful bean company.
Won't you join us on this beautiful bean odyssey? Bush's, that beautiful bean company.
All right. So as we get into the recipes, you know, Q's going to start cooking some veggies for our stew. But before we get to the guacamole, we have a little bit of prep we have to do. We're going to start making some pickled onions. These are going to be a quick pickle. You know, there's a couple of different ways you can go about making pickles. You know, there's this way, which there's going to be no heat applied. There's also, you know, you can heat up your brine and pour it over your veggies. You can cook your veggies in the brine. And then there's also the fermented pickles, which is one of my favorites, but those ones are a little weird and they do take a little bit of extra time. It takes sometimes up to, you know, a couple of weeks for like sauerkraut, or, you know, a week for something simple like pickled onions. But anyways, for these ones, so we're going to start, we've got some honey in our bowl, a little bit of white wine vinegar. Throw a good amount of salt in there. You want these to be seasoned pretty well. You know, that acid from that vinegar is really going to balance out any salt. So if it feels like there's a lot of salt in there, just trust the professionals on this one. So just get that all mixed in, get that honey dissolved, salt mixed in there, and then get your onions in there. And again, these ones are just going to hang out. Just do these first, you know, and let them sit for, you know, about 20 minutes, half an hour. They'll just lightly pickle, give you that nice, you know, that nice acid to balance out everything that's going on in the stew. And then Q's already gotten started on our veggies for the stew. So he's got the aromatics in there, and then he's going to take us through what he's got going on next.
Yeah, so we're going to start our chickpea stew right here. So just got a little bit of aromatics going on here. You know, the proper culinary term would be your mirepoix, which would be, you know, your carrot, your celery, your onions. In this case, we also have bell pepper in that for my southern folks out there. That would be known as the Holy Trinity. Just kind of, you know, it's a standard flavor base. You know, it's going to add a lot of depth of flavor. And, you know, when you're making stews, you always kind of want to layer those flavors together. So that's kind of the idea here. So we got our vegetables sweating just a little bit, and we're almost done here. Next, we're going to add a little bit of seasonal vegetables. So I got some seasonal vegetable here. I got some asparagus, some red radish, a little bit of fennel in here. But for the sake of, you know, we are cooking a chickpea stew, or if you're making any kind of stew, you know, it's always good to use those fresh seasonal vegetables when adding to your stew, whether it be, you know, in the fall, you're adding maybe a little bit of pumpkin or some squash to there, or, you know, in the summer, you know, you might be adding a little bit of broccoli or things like that. Or Rob, you know, just kind of keeping it within season. You know, you always kind of want to cook within that season. So I'm going to go here and head and drop this fennel, asparagus, and red radish in here. We're going to season this with just a little bit of salt here and a pinch of pepper. Smells awesome. Going to get that kind of going. Give it a good stir. I'm going to let these veggies kind of sweat out.
While that's happening, we'll go ahead and we'll make this guacamole. So got our avocados. I've got them already cut up. You know, I do them inside the skins like this, especially when I'm cooking at home. But you know, there's more than one way to skin a cat. You know what I mean? You can do them in the skin like this if you like. If you're not comfortable with that, if you're afraid, you know, you don't want to put that knife through on your hand, which, I mean, that certainly is valid. You can scoop it out and dice it on your cutting board. Another trick, you know, we use in the restaurant, you know, we would take a little, like a roasting rack or a baking rack. I've got one here just to illustrate. Little roasting rack in here. Scoop them out, mash that pulp through. Then you get nice avocado mash in no time. But for this, we'll go ahead and get our avocados in there. We'll add a splash of lime juice in there and some scallions. And we'll go ahead and use the old-fashioned potato masher and mash that up. A little bit of salt in there as well. I like to season as I go, you know, just season the layers that we're making. And again, you don't want to, you know, you don't need to really mash this up to a complete smooth puree. You know, it's guacamole, so it should have some texture to it. We're going to add some good texture with the beans as well. That's a good spot. Get our beans in there. Again, these are the Taco Fiesta black beans. And notice I'm using that liquid in there as well. You know, that stuff is super delicious. You know, you don't want to lose that stuff. It really contributes to the flavor, it really sets this dish over the top. So we'll get those mixed in. A little bit of tomato in there as well. And a little bit of fresh chopped cilantro, as much or as little as you'd like. You know, there are measurements on the recipe, but the beautiful thing about cooking is that you can alter it as your tastes, you know, as your preferences. Yeah, this one's super simple, nice and easy. Just mix that up really well. You go ahead and get that into your serving platter there. There you go, a nice mound of guacamole. I could take this down in one sitting on my own, but yeah, it's just me. But that's a delicious one for, you know, we got March Madness coming right now, so that's a delicious one if you're gonna have a little small little get together. And then Q's gonna talk to us about what he's got going on in the stew.
So yeah, so we're gonna go over to our next steps here. So what I'm gonna be doing next, I'm gonna be adding a little bit of harissa to our veg mix here. And for those that don't know, harissa is it's a North African spice. You'll find it common in places like Morocco, in that area in the Northern Sahara region. You know, very packed with a lot of flavor, a lot of spices. You know, it's typically a vegetarian, you know, for countries that this is coming out of. So, you know, with this harissa, you're gonna get all, you know, it's gonna hit all those cylinders on flavor as far as, you know, you're gonna get your spicy, a little bit of sweet, you know, you're gonna get that aromatic from the cumin, the coriander, some garlic, you know, olive oil in there. It's kind of, you know, it's hitting on all the cylinders of flavor that you want. And we're just gonna kind of stir this in here and let it kind of cook down for just about a minute before we go into our next steps here. But just kind of focusing on the global flavors. Ooh, sorry about that. So, like beans are virtually in almost every culture, around the world. You know, from the east to the west, you'll always find beans in some capacity in all over the world. Dating back, to the indigenous North America, they were called, the three sisters, where they would grow their crops together, use it for trade, which would have been beans, corn, and squash. The Mandan, the Iroquois tribes were known for actually trading within and growing those crops and growing them together because they all benefited off of each other in some way as growing in crops. As before I go into that, my next step here, I'm going to just add a little bit of the tomatoes here and kind of break this down a little bit. I'm going to let these cook and stew for a little bit and have them break down. But yeah, going back into the global flavors of it, it was a main, like I was mentioning before, it was a main agricultural crop of various indigenous groups, all across North America. It has a seamless incorporation into a multitude of dishes, where from, chilaquiles, if you're looking kind of for a Latin inspired, adding some beans to the top of your to your chips, going Tex-Mex style, where we would have a chili, obviously, you'll want some of that. We typically use like a kidney bean or whichever kind of beans, whether you're using the white chili, maybe doing the white chili, you're using white beans. Dumpling fillings, sometimes you'll find soybean fermented and some dumplings, or even if you're looking at dips, if you're looking at a corn and black bean salsa style of dip, always has that kind of versatility, no matter what kind of dishes you're cooking. So my tomatoes are broken down a little bit. I am just going to deglaze this with a little bit of veg stock here. I'm going to, at the same time, add my low sodium garbanzo beans here, Bush's, of course. And I'm going to kind of just let that stew here for a little bit. And as that's stewing, I'm going to kick it over to Dan, and he's going to go to a little bit about the health benefits of plant protein and swapping that out.
And we talked a little bit at the beginning about, how beans are just a great swap, rather than using, a beef or a pork, chicken, one of those farmed meats. Beans they're perfect if you're trying to go more plant-based. They're almost a whole protein. They have like just great amounts of protein, fiber. All of these things are going to help with reducing cholesterol. They're going to assist with weight control. The protein in those beans are going to help you feel full for longer. You know what I mean? So they're just a great, just super versatile, just a great item to have on hand, and they're also, they're inexpensive. A can of beans at the store is, a couple bucks, maybe $1.50, like super, just really reasonably priced, especially Bush's beans, and you just get great quality and great value for what you're paying. And again, kind of you've seen a couple of applications here in this demo, using them as an ingredient in a dish, in the guacamole as a dip. Here they're on the center of the plate here in the chickpea stew. So they're just super versatile again, and that's kind of what we really want to really highlight, is the versatility of the beans and the sustainability of them. So, and on that note,
absolutely, and kind of just going off, the versatility of beans. I'd like to just take a moment to kind of introduce everyone to Bush's new line of their new Sidekick line. So these are going to be, already kind of flavored beans here that you could use as an additional, as a topper or as a mix-in. There will be available. They're not available yet, but they'll be available within the month or so to national retailers like Walmart and possibly Amazon. They're going to come in 4 options. So right here, I have on display, I have the Taco Fiesta variety. So that Taco Fiesta one is going to be a black beans that's slow simmered, a little bit of chipotle seasoning, some spices, some corn, bell peppers. Very flavorful. You can add them as taco toppers, or toppings to your nachos, or you can just have them as a side on their own, which any of these you can have a side on their own. But, also displayed here, we have our rustic Tuscany. And this is our chickpea line, where slow simmering and Mediterranean inspired sauce. You have some lemon, some garlic, some olive oil in here that's kind of marinated in. Very versatile. Obviously, chickpeas are versatile. It add instant, kind of pizzazz, if you will, to your pasta salad, or to, if you're doing a Mediterranean style wrap, or you can even use it as a base for a hummus if, you want to just add a little bit of extra flavor to that without actually, going out and buying all the ingredients. You can this would be kind of your one-stop shop and adding some of those flavors, that lemon, that garlic, that's going to be in there. Some that are not displayed here, but I would still like to go over as well there will be a Southwest Zest one, and it's going to be kind of a medium spice one. Very flavorful, pinto beans. They're going to be simmered in like a seasoned sauce that's going to be, mixed up with some cumin, jalapenos, to add a little bit of kick, whether you're adding that to your chicken or adding it to the rice or doing the kind of a bake or as a topper. The other one that is not displayed here is our simmering Caribbean one, that has got like a mild spice to it. So, for all you spice warriors out there, don't worry. It's a slight spice. It's going to be black beans that are going to be slowly simmered, and it's kind of almost has a sweet and savory sauce that's going to be mixed with it. It's going to have some jerk seasonings in there, colorful peppers, your red bell peppers, green bell peppers, and that and such. You can use those as well as a mix in, or, use them as for a side. Like I said, all these can be used as sides. Most of these are vegetarian, with the exception of our taco pieza that does have a little bit of chicken stock in there, but also great as vegetarian options. And like I said earlier, they'll be available within retail within the next month or so. That being said, we are going to, our stew is looking pretty good here.
I want to note too, sorry, Q, the rustic Tuscany chickpeas, those would be great in this dish.
Yes.
Just to add that extra layer of flavor. And they've got great tomatoey, garlicky, lots of herbs in there. So those will be a super delicious swap, just for the plain old chickpeas in this dish. And then it looks like the stew is ready. So let's go ahead and
so we got our stew here ready. So we're just gonna go and plate this right now. Like I said, lots of aromatics in here, pretty good. Making sure if you are following along with this cooking demo, and you're plating it, always make sure to get some of that liquid in there. I know that we reduced it down a little bit, but that liquid is going to have a lot of concentrated flavor in there. It's going to be real tasty. So always want to make sure that we're getting a little bit of that liquid in the stew as it reduces. We're going to top it off here with a little bit of our pickled onions that we made earlier and a few fresh sprigs of cilantro.
I like to call that a ploosh.
A ploosh.
That's a scientific term.
And some fresh avocado here. So just a couple, got some diced avocado. That's just going to kind of go over the top here. And my avocado wants to be difficult today, but that's okay.
And Gwen, we're going pretty fast. So if there's any questions, we can take some questions.
Yeah,
if you want.
If there's any, yeah, absolutely. If there's any questions out there, I know.
Finish that stew with a piece of toasted sourdough bread there, but fire away if you got some.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a question real quick, but as folks are kind of thinking about their questions too, again, I'll mention to feel free to put them in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. Because you made the pickled onion at the top of the class, could you kind of verbally go over again how you made that?
Yeah, so you just want to slice those onions nice and thin. The thinner they are, the quicker they're going to pickle. I think I mentioned I call these a quick pickle because they're not heated, they're not fermented. It literally just happens while you're making the stew. But you just slice those nice and thin, and you have your brine with the vinegar, the honey, and the salt. You want that to be seasoned pretty heavily. It's going to really help to penetrate and break down those onions in that short period of time. And then you just let them hang out. You let them marinate, and half an hour while you're cooking the stew, and that's pretty much it. They're super simple.
Yeah.
Terrific. Someone is asking if you could use a shallot for the quick pickle.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
shallots, they're a little more at once they're both stronger and more delicate than onions,
Mhm.
where onions are going to have kind of that textural bite. Shallots are going to be a little bit more stronger in the flavor aspect. They're also going to have a nice, like, undertones of garlic and stuff in there. So definitely shallots would be delicious.
I love pickled shallots. So.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Someone asked early on, what is the difference between using a kosher salt versus a regular salt in soaking and or cooking beans?
You want to take
Take
that?
that.
I'll take it. I prefer kosher salts over almost any other. I use sea salt when cooking as well, but or when finishing dishes, but I usually don't use like an iodized or a table salt. I just stick with kosher salt. It's a personal preference, but really it's a matter of, the difference between the two is you're going to have a difference in, a teaspoon of kosher salt is probably going to weigh a little bit less than a teaspoon of iodized salt, because it's just the way the crystals are formulated are going to take up some more space. So that's why I usually, typically at home, I'll use a scale when I'm measuring anything. But when cooking or soaking beans, usually if I'm using dry beans, I won't season them until after they're cooked. If you season them too soon, they have a tendency to cook unevenly, and they just get a little weird. Sometimes you've got some beans that are overcooked and some beans that are still kind of raw and they've been cooking for 45 minutes. So it's not really good for anybody. But usually at home, I'll use canned beans, unless I'm making something like a cassoulet where it's going to, braise for, a couple of hours with the duck legs or something like that. But usually I'll just use canned beans. They're convenient. They're all cooked perfectly. They already taste delicious. It just takes some of the guesswork out of it.
Absolutely.
Someone's asking if you would ever serve this stew that you just prepared over rice.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't see why not.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's definitely gonna help. That rice is gonna add some starch. It's gonna help. Obviously make it more hearty. And help keep you full. But yeah,
any, you can serve it over rice or any, kind of ancient grain, whether it be a farro or something like that, or quinoa. I mean, yeah, definitely makes for a complete hearty meal if
sure.
you're looking to add a little bit of starch to that. Yeah, absolutely.
And on that note, I mean, I know we're talking about, plant proteins and plant-based diets and things like that, but this stew is delicious, served with some grilled fish. You can throw in some chopped bacon there while you're cooking it as well if you wanted to. It'd be great with some braised pork shoulder or something like that. So you don't have to just be vegetarian or plant focused. You can certainly, if that's within your dietary guidelines, you can certainly serve this one with some animal protein.
Yeah, absolutely.
It sounds like someone was cooking along with you. They said they're just eating the stew and it's so good. For the leftovers, is it okay to add the cilantro with the leftovers, or is it better to serve fresh
I
after you
would
eat it?
personally not add the cilantro. I would kind of keep that separate. When you add the cilantro in there, what's going to do is it's going to cook down, oxidize. It's going to get, kind of brown and in there, like aesthetically, it won't look as great. I mean, you absolutely could, but I feel like it's always great to add. If you're going to be using fresh herbs anytime you're cooking, it's always good to add fresh herbs to that finished product rather than kind of holding it on a hot hold, if you will.
Yeah, it's just going to help keep them. That herb's in there to help brighten things up.
Yeah,
and if you put it in there and then cool it down and then reheat it, it's just going to cook it. It's going to get, it's not going to be as fresh and bright and nice, and green, like you said. So definitely when using, herbs as a garnish, you always want to put those in last.
Someone's asking, what combination of pulses do you recommend combining or not combining, both in terms of flavor and as well as in cooking time.
Well,
What combination of, I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
missed the
Of
first part.
pulses. So, and Cesar, this is Cesar's question, so feel free to type more if you want to specify. But I'm gonna guess that means like beans and lentils, for example, or beans with other beans, anything kind of in that family.
I have to repeat that question one more time. I'm not gonna
Yeah,
lie.
sure.
Like, I have to repeat that one
There's
more
a lot of
time.
words coming out.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Okay,
words there.
so there's some specifications. Thank you, Cesar. So what combination of pulses, and specifically, so beans, lentils, chickpeas, cowpeas, etc., do you recommend combining or not combining, both in terms of flavor and cook time?
Oh, okay.
I mean, if you're using a dry lentil, those things, they cook pretty quick in the grand scheme of things. I think you're looking at probably between 15 and 25 minutes to get lentils from raw. You really just want to think about that, as you're cooking. If you're using canned beans, remember that they're already cooked. All you're basically doing is heating them up. So, if you're going to do like a lentil stew or something like that, a lentil dish where you're going to add some beans to it, get those lentils cooked all the way, and then add your beans into it. And as far as combinations, I mean, the world's your oyster.
Yeah,
they're different beans have some subtle flavor profiles. Like cannellini beans and kidney beans tend to be a little bit sweeter, like kind of subtly sweet. But
yeah,
I mean, that's the fun part. You can just try things. You can experiment. You can try, see what works, see what doesn't work, see what you like, see what you don't like. I think that's the best part about cooking in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's any right or wrong combination when it comes to, using beans. Like you mentioned before with the lentils, you definitely want to be aware of cooking times and things like that. If you are going to be mixing beans together, you want to make sure that, they either they have a similar cooking time or you cook them separately, and then you can combine them together for whatever your completed dish might be. But as far as, the options, like you said, the world's your oyster. There are, there's many options. There's no bad one. Whatever your dietary preference is, if you want to make some garbanzos and some red kidneys, have at it. Yeah. I don't see any reason why you couldn't do that.
I know there's regions in the country that scoff at beans and chili, but like,
yeah, exactly.
If you're making a vegan or a vegetarian chili, I mean, you're going to have, more than one type of bean in there. So, find what you like, just try it. Don't be afraid, try new things. At the end of the day, it's just cooking.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So those are all the questions that we've got for now, but folks, keep them coming. Again, feel free to put those in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. And, even if there's demonstrations going on, then we'll get to them afterwards.
Yeah. Cool. Well, then we'll go right into the smoothie. So like I said before, we're using the whole can, right? So in the mixer here, we've got the water or the aquafaba from the can. It's just a super protein enriched. Lots of protein in that water, so that's going to help it. We're going to whip it and turn it into something that resembles whipped cream. And it's, it happens pretty quick too. So it'll happen here on camera. In the bowl, we've got that aquafaba, we've got some honey and a splash of vanilla extract. And let's fire it up.
Yeah, and we're going to fire it up, and even if you can get aquafaba, you can use it as a replacement for egg whites in bacon dishes, or if you're making something like I've done it in application of vegan cookies. It's kind of a really cool product. You can actually make it yourself by cooking chickpeas and just using that liquid from your cooked chickpeas, and you can use that as your aquafaba base there.
So while that's going, and I mean, it's already halfway there. So while that's going, we're gonna go and knock out this smoothie real quick. So we've got, for this one, we've got some strawberries, blueberries, bananas. And this is a great one, you can do it ahead of time. You don't have to do it that morning, right? If you're you're making a smoothie for breakfast. I cut them up, I throw them in the freezer, get them nice and frozen. That's just going to help you at the end product. Just have a nice, nice cold smoothie at the end. So we'll get those in there. Yeah, we're using the whole can of beans. So those guys jump in. Splash of vanilla extract in there. And then this is some coconut milk as well as some water. But, you can change that up as you want. You can use oat milk, almond milk, whatever. You can use dairy milk. It's up to you. And then if you don't want to use water, I use water in this recipe just to keep it nice and neutral. You can use orange juice or any other fruit juice that you want. And then put just a touch of sea salt in there. I said it's a sweet application, but I generally put salt in almost everything I cook. It just is going to help to round out those flavors, really maintain that balance in there. And then we got a little bit of crushed ice we're going to throw in there as well. And I'm going to take this over and puree it, so it's going to be loud. Really loud. Now all the electric appliances are off, so we can hear ourselves. So beautiful, nice, beautiful color on that smoothie. It's just a little thick, but that's okay.
So just like whipped cream, like I said, when we're using this aquafaba, we're looking for a nice stiff peak. As you can see right there, that is going to be our Beam liquid right there. We're going to just take a dollop of this. Dan's going to pour it right over the top there.
Right on top of that. Sometimes it's a little too fluffy and likes to stick. That's okay. Straw in there, and you're ready to enjoy.
Just kind of recapping.
Yeah.
Here we have our bean smoothie,
So
stew, and our guacamole.
yeah, so like we said, when we're talking about beans, we're talking about versatility, right? Versatility and sustainability. I mean, those are the big ones.
Yeah.
Here's three very different applications for them. Exploring different cultures, different cuisines. And you saw how easy all this stuff was. I mean, he and I did it, and I know we're professionals, but he and I did it in, we're about half an hour now. So a little fast, a little quick on the time that we had allotted, but again, keep it simple, find things that you like.
Yeah.
And again, these beans, sustainability, they are replenishing the soil and the recyclability of the can, and then obviously the functional benefits, plant-based protein source. We see them, like we said, in cultures all over the world. They can be the main, the center of the plate, if you will, or they can just be a good flavor carrier to introduce new ingredients like harissa or some of those other just whatever seasonings you like in whatever different culture.
Yeah.
But I hope you guys have some more questions, because we would love to.
Yeah, I hope you guys have more questions. I hope you guys enjoyed everything as well. Yeah, thank you for attending, and I hope you guys all enjoyed this demonstration that we put on for you.
Thank you so much. Everything looks really, really fantastic. We do have a few questions about the smoothie, and folks also feel free to add more questions to the Q&A about anything that was made this afternoon. So there's a question about the, let's see, should you start with a cold bowl when you're making the bean whipped cream?
Traditionally, like obviously when you're doing something like a whipped cream, you want that bowl to be cold. For the aquafaba, doesn't necessarily have to be cold. Unless you want that whipped cream cold, it's not going to hold as long as say a whipped cream would. So you can keep the bowl cold, but I will say that it's not it's not a necessity. It's not going to make or break whether that aquafaba is going to react and the way it's going to whip up as you would say if you were taking heavy cream and trying to mix and trying to make a whipped cream.
Someone's asking about just a refresher on the ingredients that went into this smoothie. For example, was the bean liquid included in that?
Yeah, so the bean liquid, that's the aquafaba. That's the whip that's on top. In the blender itself, we had the actual beans from the can. We use the cannellini beans there. You could also use, a navy bean or a Great Northern. The cannellinis are just a little bit, like we said, they've got a little bit of a sweetness to them, so they lend themselves really well to a recipe like this. And then we had fresh berries and bananas in there, and those things you can swap those out. You can experiment. You don't have to use blueberries and strawberries. You can use raspberries, blackberries. You can put acai in there if you want to get trendy about it. The banana, again, I mean, that one, it doesn't need to be in there. Bananas in smoothies, they typically help with the texture, but we've got the beans in there as well, which are going to give us some nice texture. And then we used coconut milk and water as the liquid. But you could swap that out. You could use, whatever plant-based or dairy milk you want to use. You could use a fruit juice instead of water. The choice is yours. I will say though, definitely if you have the time, if you're prepping ahead of time, definitely freeze the fruit.
Yes.
It's just gonna help you have a nice cold smoothie at the end of it. And then, you want to use a little bit of crushed ice and make sure that ice is crushed. Especially if you don't have like a super nice Vitamix, like we have the luxury of using. If you have like a different brand of like a blender that's more designed for at-home use, it may not be as powerful. So definitely crush up that ice before that goes in there.
We have a few questions about the aquafaba. So someone's asking, was there anything together with the aquafaba in the bowl before you started whipping?
Yes, so there was a little bit of honey, just to kind of sweeten it up. Obviously, like it is what it is. It is bean liquid. It's going to be, it's going to be a little beany. So we're adding a little bit of honey in that. Obviously, you have that natural kind of sweetness that's coming off the white bean liquid that we use. But we just add a little bit of honey and vanilla extract in there, just kind of whipping up, almost as if we were just making an actual whipped cream.
You can also, I've read recipes that add cream of tartar. We didn't put any of that in here, but what that's going to do is just going to help that foam to hold up. It's going to help that whip stay whipped for longer.
Yes.
So you can certainly use that, but again, it's not not necessary.
There's a question about just the clarification of the definition of aquafaba and if that means any bean liquid or if it has to be chickpea.
It is any bean liquid. So anytime you're cooking the bean, that water, there's going to be starches that's going to be released from those beans. That starch that's released from the beans as you cook it is going to kind of gelatinize in that water, and that will actually be your aquafaba. So it's not limited to garbanzo beans. Definitely, aquafaba comes in all forms of kidney, where we're talking about kidney beans or black beans or cannellini beans. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for this recipe, we used the cannellini bean stuff. The chickpea that was kind of the first one that came up when aquafaba started coming around a couple of years ago. But yeah, like you said, you can use the liquid from any. Just again, you think about the flavors going on in there. Chickpeas obviously can taste like chickpeas. If you're using like a black bean, the liquid from the black beans, obviously it's going to be darker, and it's going to have, more of that like earthy black bean flavor going on. So may not want to use that in a sweet application, but I actually, I did see a recipe a couple of days ago where they swapped out black beans in brownies for flour to make some gluten-free brownies. Looks super good. I haven't tried it yet, but it's on my list.
You may have sort of answered this question, but someone was asking about kind of the flavor differences between if you whipped egg whites, for example, or the aquafaba.
Yeah, I mean, egg whites, they're gonna taste like egg whites.
Yeah. No, that's gotta-
That's the easiest way of
Yeah,
putting
that's
it.
gotta-
I certainly enjoy, like egg whites in like a, in a cocktail, like a, pisco sour or something like that. But, if you want to leave the eggs out of there and use,
Yeah.
use the aquafaba from a can of chickpeas or whatever it may be. It's definitely sometimes that that bean, that chickpea flavor has a tendency to come through a little bit more, where an egg white might take on the flavors of whatever you're mixing it with a little bit easier. So it is something to think about there. But again, I've seen plenty of recipes for baked goods and cocktails and everything in between that swap out the egg white for the aquafaba.
Yeah, you could definitely swap out egg whites in the aquafaba. I've done a lot of work with cocktails using aquafaba. My general rule of thumb, if you are going to swap out egg whites, as he was mentioning before, that, if you're using the garbanzo or whether it's the cannellini, that flavor is going to come through. So my general rule of thumb, for every 8 ounces of liquid, you want to use about 1 tablespoon of aquafaba. If not, about 1 or half a tablespoon of aquafaba per 8 ounces of liquid. It'll still give you that froth, if you're making like, a gin Ricky or something, and you're wanting to have a nice little frothy body to it. Kind of start small and build your way up rather than dumping, 2-3 tablespoons of that aquafaba in there, because it's definitely going to taste a lot beany.
It can get weird.
Yeah, it can get very weird. And, I've had a lot of trial and error with it. So I'm just, kind of giving my point of view on if you are going to be swapping that out in a cocktail, definitely start low and then kind of build up from there.
Okay, this question kind of built on the use of aquafaba. And this person has made cookies with chickpea water, but was curious if you could use a white bean aquafaba for baking purposes.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I haven't tried it, but I don't see why not. We've done the whip with the white bean and the chickpea stuff, and it whips up just the same. A slight flavor difference, but I think in a baked good, you're probably not going to notice that flavor difference at all. But yeah, I mean, I don't see why not.
Yeah, don't see why not.
And then separately, someone's asking, what is your personal bean dish that you make at home? Personal favorite, perhaps.
You know what? This chickpea stew is my recipe. I've made it. I've been making it for years. I made it in the restaurant. I make it at home. It's a good one. I just keep it in my back pocket, just, especially for those days where it's like, middle of the week and you haven't had a chance to go to the grocery store and you're kind of cleaning out the fridge. Chickpea stew. I mean, it's perfect. I always there's always at least 1 can of chickpeas in our pantry. So this one is definitely my go-to, and I'm actually really glad that we got to demo it today. So
yeah. Oh man, I'm trying to think. My favorite. So I'm actually a really, really big chili guy. So like I make tons of chili at home. Whether it be for when I'm inviting friends over for a big game or things like that. I always have dark red kidney beans on deck in my dry storage at home. Other than that, I do like to use beans, especially black beans, like a lot of salsas and things like that. I'll add them to salsa, just to add a little texture. I use them a lot for breakfast, whether I'm using them as a puree, like, kind of like in a Huevos Ranchero, but sometimes I just kind of like a little bit of, I'll cook up some black beans, I'll flavor them up, with a little bit of Latin inspired flavors, a little bit of cumin. I might squeeze a little lime juice in there, some cilantro, kind of mix it up and just kind of have that as a side for, in my morning breakfast routine, or as just like kind of a little snack with my dinner.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much. This has been really, really wonderful.
Absolutely.
It's fun to see everything in front of you that was prepared this afternoon. Looks really delicious. And just a giant thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. This has been a lot of fun. Hopefully everyone's walking away with some new recipes that they can try, put in their rotation. I know we're all kind of cooking at home a lot more these days. So thank you so much. And everyone have a great afternoon and weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.